Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll begin, sir.
Mhm.
Ambassador Suri, thank you very much, sir, for speaking with ANI. Sir, I'll begin by asking you about the UAE's decision to exit OPEC after more than 5, 6 decades. It has been being seen as a major shift. How significant is this moment for global energy geopolitics?
Look, I think it's a very significant development. I must say that it hasn't really come as too much of a surprise because for those of us who've been watching the region, the signs had been there at least since 2021. UAE was not happy when OPEC was cutting quotas. UAE was not happy with the fact that its quota was at that time pegged at 2.7 million barrels a day when its capacity to produce was much higher. So even in 2021, July, about 5 years back, UAE was indicating to Saudi Arabia and others that it's not happy with the state of affairs. And now they've finally executed their decision to part ways with OPEC after, as you said, uh, I think they joined in 1967, even before
Hmm.
Abu Dhabi joined in 67, even before
Hmm.
the Union of UAE emerged. I think what they are aiming at is much greater degree of strategic autonomy, much greater degree of flexibility in terms of how much they produce, and perhaps to be much more nimble in meeting or changing output according to market requirements.
Mhm. So there are also reports that suggest tensions between UAE and Saudi Arabia and dissatisfaction with the production quotas, as you mentioned. How much of this decision is about intra-Gulf rivalry versus economic strategy? And would you also describe this as a tactical move driven by current crisis? We have seen disruption in the Strait of Hormuz or a long-term strategic reset by the UAE.
But I think, look, we've all seen reports about differences between Saudi Arabia and UAE on a bunch of different issues. But I think this particular decision, even though obviously the Saudis will not appreciate it, UAE seems to have taken it as a strategic decision, not a tactical one.
Mm.
And the timing may have been tactical of announcing it on the day that the summit was taking place in Riyadh of the GCC countries. But the decision itself, as I said, is something that UAE has been mulling over for quite a period. And I think they see that right now there's a considerable and looming shortage of oil. Once the Strait of Hormuz reopens, as and when it happens, there will be a need to ramp up production. And I think UAE's long-term strategy is that they have the capacity to produce more. They are a low-cost producer, and they want to monetize that resource so that they can
Mm.
fund their very ambitious plans to create a non-oil economy, to diversify their own economy away from oil into AI, into data centers, into free zones and trade, and all of these other things that they're doing quite well.
Mhm. So, to what extent do you believe that has the ongoing Iran conflict and disruption in the Strait of Hormuz accelerated this decision by the UAE? And also, where do you see the war going on? Because there's no clear light here.
Yeah, well, as I said on the first part of your question, there's clearly the intent of UAE to have distanced itself from OPEC has been building up for at least 5 years. The timing of the announcement is something else, and I think it's linked to a range of factors. Perhaps UAE wanted to signal its unhappiness with the way Arab countries as a group have
Mm.
responded to the recent crisis with Iran. As you know, UAE has been targeted by almost 3,000 missiles,
Mm.
projectiles, rockets, drones, and so on. Probably more than the rest of the GCC countries put together. and certainly much more than Israel itself has been targeted by Iran. So there's a degree of anger in UAE that over the way it's been targeted by Iran, but there's also an anger that its GCC neighbors and its Arab allies haven't really stood up to be counted in condemning the Iranian attacks or in giving any meaningful support to UAE. So something that Dr. Anwar Gargash, the diplomatic advisor to the president, has said on more than a couple of occasions that this is a time when UAE is seeing who's the friend who stands by me and who's the bystander.
Yeah, Ambassador Suri, just last question, sir. Since India is a major energy importer from the UAE, could this exit translate into better pricing or more stable supplies for India? And do you believe that India could leverage this moment to deepen bilateral energy ties with the UAE outside multilateral frameworks?
Look, deepening the bilateral energy relationship is something that I invested a lot of time when I was ambassador in UAE from 2016 to 2019. We signed our first oil concession for Lower Zakum at that time. We opened the doors for our subsequent concessions in Abu Dhabi onshore one. We signed and executed our first strategic petroleum reserve at that time in Padur and the second one in Mangalore. So I certainly see that given the very special relationship that India has with the UAE, we should benefit from this move in two ways. One, I think once the war ends and things come back a little bit to the normal, UAE will be able to produce more, and that should have a calming effect on oil prices. And India, certainly as one of the world's largest importers of oil, will benefit from any moderation in oil prices from their current levels. And secondly, because of our relationship with UAE, we may be able to do bilateral deals with UAE in a way that we cannot while UAE remains within the straitjacket of the OPEC.
Ambassador Suri, sir, thank you very much for speaking with the ANI.